Well, we'll find out. Let's see. Let's see where the first question goes. Um, I think maybe I don't know if it's too early to tell. Like if people in the '80s knew that like that's the type of shit that would define them, and I think like obviously as we I don't know if advance is the right word as a culture, but it's going to it's going to become harder and harder to really find things that really are original, you know what I mean? And that yes, and that are outstanding, or that I think unfortunately perhaps, and I don't know that I 100% agree with this, but like that we became this is what it's going to be remembered for, and I don't know if I entirely believe or agree with it, but the 2010s will be like the year that we became like the culture of outrage, and I think that's probably for better or worse. That's what's going to happen. I remember I read this. This is just going to go off on a little tangent here, but I remember reading this interesting article about how over time, culture obviously changes, and with it, what we deem acceptable changes. And I think that there's a lot of people now who are very on their high, who believe that like they're truly woke, and like they would never they would and could never do anything to ever possibly offend anyone. And that in 30 or 40 years from now, something that they do, some sort of behavior of theirs will be seen as like, oh, you did that? I can't believe that you would have, I can't believe you did that. And then, it'll be funny when they have to defend it. We'll see how, I guess, self-aware they are when they're like, well, it was a different time. And then they're like, oh, fuck, people used to say that to me. But I don't know. I think that's unfortunately maybe where we're going. And I think that it's also blown a little bit out of proportion as everything is on the internet. I think that I don't think that we're truly at this point where like, oh, you can't say anything anymore. And, I think it's a little bit of bullshit there. Um, so I like started doing it when I was in probably grade 4 or something like that. And it's kind of I don't know if this is going to be the greatest of advice, but we'll try it anyway or whatever. But it's that because the whole thing, right, is that I don't know how accurate this is anymore, but they used to say that the biggest fears that people had was public speaking was number one and death was number two, right? It's like Seinfeld did a bit about this as well back in the 90s. I don't know again how accurate this study is that he was quoting, if it even is realistic at all. But the idea behind it, right, is that because obviously people don't want to look foolish, right? And especially when you're dead, no one gives a shit. You can't possibly give a shit about how foolish you look when you're dead. But no one wants to look foolish, and I think that is the first thing you need to kind of get over is that who gives a shit what anyone thinks of you. So that's the first challenge to overcome, and then the second one is to understand that everyone, like every single person, is uncomfortable to a certain degree speaking in front of people. Every comedian that walks out for the start of their Netflix special 2 minutes beforehand was just like, fuck, here we go. All right, fuck, trying to hype themselves into going and doing this, right? Because it's just it's a tough experience being especially one person in front of any group of people. You're highly outnumbered right off the bat, and you have no idea how they're going to react to you, right? So I there's the only other real, I guess, practical advice I can give, because there's not really anything practical to like, oh, fucking suck it up and, just don't care what people think about you. Cause it's like, well, how do you do that? Right. Is just to, so everyone finds their sort of, what is it? Their confidence in certain ways. And I always found it really in prep is that the more prepared I am, the less worried I am going into something. And so that just may mean, uh, rehearsing a whole bunch of times in front of a mirror or wherever you need to do that, and that sort of thing, right? And it's sort of a probably cliched, and but it is what it is, right? Like, yeah, you just got to get in there and know exactly what you're going to say. And some people, it just isn't for them. Some people cannot memorize shit to save their lives. And a lot of people think that, oh, well, I'll just go out there and wing it. And if that is the absolute worst, is going out in front of a group of people with nothing prepared, and every fucking second feels like a minute has passed without anything being said, with just people staring at you like, what the fuck are you talking about? Like, or why aren't you saying something? Or just looking at you like you're a fucking idiot, aren't you? So that's the kind of thing where you just need to really be as prepared as possible. And it doesn't hurt to have a few notes in front of you, things like that. Even if you watch Netflix specials, it's unfortunate that, like, it's the worst example to use. My advice, especially like in stand-up comedy, is to like go and watch a comedian on their tour, and you'll see all sorts of weird shit, especially depending on how early in the tour it is. But you'll see like either just the pretty standard is having a bar stool out in front, and they'll have their jokes, or like a sort of roadmap of their jokes taped to it, so that when they go and grab their drink of water, they can quickly look at it and be like, oh, that's the next joke. This is the next part I have to do, that kind of thing. So that's a perfectly acceptable type of thing. I've seen people with fucking iPads or whatever, tablets or their phone out with the exact same information, and being able to check that kind of shit. So it's it's probably best to be over prepared for anything, especially when it comes to public speaking. Well, if you have the charisma for it, you can get away with it, but that is really not something that can be taught. There are people who just are naturally charismatic and can get away with that kind of thing, and then there are people who are just fucking dull as shit. And you know, I guess if the response you're looking for is a nice try and a pat on the back from people who feel sorry for you, then absolutely that's the reaction that you may get if you are at least slightly likable enough when you go out and botch something when you're public speaking. But for the most part, no, there's not, especially if it's in a sense where someone's paid to be there, but when it's going to be a tough crowd anyway, especially like in a, say, high school or college, even like assembly or something like that, where you're just like, holy, like no one wants to be there. So now no one wants to be there, and you are up there taking up their time. So you better fucking have something to say that's worthwhile, or they're going to be real pissed off. Oh man, I think well, first of all, it's a little above my pay grade, I'm sure. But I think that I think that what people think socialism is and what socialism actually is are two very different things. And you see so many people who like scream socialism at things like socialized medicine, right? Essentially, right? Or and, I mean, pure socialism, maybe, I don't know, but, like, the idea of, taking care of your citizens so that they can then pay more taxes to you, is not necessarily or specifically, socialism when used in a more, uh, commerce-driven society, right? Like, obviously, we're not coming North America and Canada that didn't make any sense. The United States and Canada are never going to become pure socialist nations, and especially not the United States, because like they don't give a fuck about their own citizens at all. But and I love that, like, oh, make America great again, but like you don't really give a fuck about Americans, you motherfuckers. You care about yourselves, and if something works really well for you, then you care about that. But like all these people who bitch about like immigrants, for example, and then oh, why aren't we doing anything? Why would we give them money? Why are we doing anything to help like the homeless here? If I'll tell you fucking right now that like those same people would be bitching if the government said, all right, so we want you guys to fucking put in another 2% on your taxes every year, and that money is going to go straight to the homeless. They would still they'd be like, oh, fuck that shit. That's my fucking money. Why should I give any more taxes to help fucking these people who couldn't get their own lives together and shit like that, right? So, they can all eat my ass. But the idea of like taking care of your own citizens, there's a kind of value to it as a country in that a person who dies can't pay taxes anymore. So, if all of your citizens are dying, then they're not going to fucking pay you shit. So I guess you can say, okay, well, I'm going to take all your money once, or you can take a little of their money for a longer period of time. And I think that there's all sorts of reasons why the United States can't or won't have socialized medicine. They probably the most likely reason is because they spend all their money in stupid other ways, like being the world's police that no one wants. And then the other reason is because uh, so many people just object to it. The idea of like, oh, I can't, why should I give my money? And they just don't understand too, right? Like they don't understand that. And I did a video about it once before too, but like in Canada, we pay less in taxes uh, every year than a person pays in premiums just for their health care off their work health care plan. So unless you happen to work for like a really good company where they're paying your full premiums, but on average, the average person is paying more on just their premiums to have health insurance. And then let's not even talk about the fucking, oh, but you broke your arm. Well, the way you broke it's not really covered under your insurance. So you're gonna have to pay for your hospital visit. You're gonna have to pay for the plaster. You're gonna have to pay for fucking someone to cut that off in 6 months or 4 months or whatever the fuck it takes to heal. And you're gonna have to pay for all that shit. And but oh hey, at least I'm not paying too much in fucking taxes. So. All right, thanks, man.